What's going on, YouTube? This is PNG Media News back at you with another edition of the Concrete and Steel Chronicles. Today, you in
Hey,
for a real treat.
hey,
I got brother Eric. He's gonna give you a talk about the federal prison system and some of the politics with some of the white cars. So you all in for a real treat. All right. So what's up, Eric, bro?
hey, give me 1 second. I just got to get away from the dog.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's good.
I got 6 dogs here. So I'll come here. Hey, what's up, Mike? Thanks for having me on.
No problem. My pleasure. So tell the people a little bit about yourself and where you from.
I'm from Northeast Baltimore. I'm actually in Northeast Baltimore City. I'm 48 years old, so you know what I mean. I came up in like the late 80s, early 90s. In Baltimore City. Like I went to Baltimore City public schools. Um, my household, I was raised by my grandparents because basically in my household, my father, he was in prison. My mother, she was okay, but usually the guy she was with was pretty unstable. You know what I mean? So there wasn't a lot of like money and stuff like that in my family. So back then when you're going to school and things like that, excuse me, when you're going to school and things like that, like there wasn't like nowadays, like all the anti-bullying and stuff like that. So when you go to school back then, you got to be fresh. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
you need new tennis shoes. You need Jordan stuff like that. You can't just go in there with some busted up stuff on. So basically, that was like kind of my situation, and people from my like situation, we kind of tend to find each other. You know what I mean? So that was like how like I started like, I guess getting into a little bit of trouble, stuff like that.
Now, your area of Baltimore, can I watch The Wire? Now, is that like near Northwest Baltimore or East Baltimore, anything like that? Or
Well,
is
see,
it like, oh, go ahead.
parts of it on the wire is filmed over. It's all through Baltimore, East Baltimore, and everything. But
Okay.
they're talking about Barksdale out of Lexington Terrace. That's over there in West Baltimore.
Okay. And where is that in relation to where you grew up?
I grew up in East Baltimore, but Northeast Baltimore. So in other words, I grew up around like okay, Greenmount Avenue and 34th Street, Bel Air Road and Frankfurt Avenue, Sedonia area, Gardenville area, that
Okay.
Northeast Baltimore.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned that you started getting into a little bit of trouble. Kind of tell me about that. Like what things did you get into?
Well, I'll tell you this much. See, we got a little crew, you know what I'm saying? Like we
Mhm.
started hanging out stuff like, kids like me that, basically, didn't have parents, that their grandparents, what I mean, stuff like that. So like, we would do different stuff, what I mean, different type of hustles. Like we would go to baseball card shops and baseball card stores, steal the baseball cards, go sell them to another dealer. Um, when we were about like 12 and 13, we ranged anywhere from like 12 to 14, 15. And this was back in the 80s. We used to actually go down a park and two of us would sit out on the bench and two others would be behind like a tree with baseball bats and or crowbars or something. And it never failed. Within 20 minutes, somebody would come out and try to pick us up, like the two that were sitting out there. So then the
Mhm.
other two would just come out and we beat them up and rob them. You know what I mean? I didn't know it. You know what I mean? I didn't know it back then. We didn't know back then what we were doing. We were just doing that to have some money, to get some tennis shoes, to be able to eat. You know what I mean? We were basically doing that out of necessity, but it kind of turns out we were kind of doing a good thing too. You know what I mean?
I mean, people were trying to pick you all up like for prostitution or something like that.
Yes, yes, like
Oh,
like
damn.
pedophile type people. Like what it was known as like the gay people hung there or whatever,
Mhm.
but we didn't realize at that time, what these people really were. But we did know this. Every time we would go down there, within 20 minutes somebody would come out and we would rob them. We'd beat them up and
Wow.
just rob them.
And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't go report that to the police because they were doing something illegal
I don't think
themselves.
so.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't know. We never stuck around.
Right. Right. Okay. right. So how long were you out there? Okay, about what age was this going on? About what age were you?
When we were doing that, I was around 12, 13. You know what I mean?
Okay,
I was the youngest out of the crowd. Like the oldest would be like 15. So
okay,
basically, like what happened with like getting into drugs and stuff like that, like I got into cocaine and selling coke. What happened was we actually found somebody's stash, and it was a
mhm,
decent amount. Now, to my knowledge, nowadays, I mean, I would say it was over a half a key. You know what I mean? What we found, and I was what 14 at the time, 13, 14 at the time, and my friends,
mhm,
they were like 15 or whatever. So we had never sold drugs. So by the time I realized how to sell drugs, somebody this crackhead lady taught me how to use like a triple beam and stuff. And she's like, "Man, you've been ripping yourself off the whole time." I mean, this is back I guess you could say 1990, 1991. I mean,
mhm.
cocaine was expensive. Like drug dealers' price was like 208 ball. I was probably
Mhm.
selling 8 balls for $60. I didn't know no better. But
Right.
what I learned there was I was able to cut into something that other people weren't, other drug dealers weren't. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about 1990, 1991, the early 90s. This is when real integration first started. You know what I mean? So what I mean by that is in all your cities, you would have separate neighborhoods. You'd have all
Mhm.
black people, all white people. You understand what I'm saying?
Right,
Back in the
right.
70s and 80s and stuff like that. So my era, it just started integrating. But there was still some of the old people in the bars, like, the older people from the neighborhood, like they were older than my parents or my parents' age, they still were in these bars. Now, these bars at the time were all white bars. Now, it wasn't like a rule, it was all white or nothing, but like, you know what I mean? Like if you go to a bar nowadays, everybody's in there mixed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But back then, it would be white bars, black bars, something like that. Now, I was able to cut into that because I was white and also because my family, I had a lot of drug addicts and stuff like that in my family. So these people knew who I was. They're like the people inside the bar. So even at 14, I could go pop up in the bar, tell them I got coke or whatever, and that's how that started rolling. Now the plugs, because listen, I'm in Baltimore City. A 14-year-old white boy ain't going to go start a strip. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
had to find my way through the bar thing. When I
Mhm.
found that, the plugs, I started pushing so much, you know what I mean? I went from getting like small amounts of stuff, like an ounce here at the most. And the next thing you know, I'm going through eighth of keys and quarter keys really fast. So the plugs are like, damn, what's up with the white boy E, the little white boy E? They're like, I was known as the white boy who could get in the bars. That's what I was known as.
Okay.
So as that's transpired, you know what I mean? We just all went through the normal stuff, getting locked up, getting money, taking losses, this and that, this and that. And something happened. Yeah, it was like 1996. Um, I had left. Okay, I had left Maryland and I went to Florida. We got something happened with some drug dealers and they got robbed or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I had to go to Florida for a couple of years because of this case. Because I had warrants for the case or whatever. So anyway, I go to Florida. I stay there till probably what was it? Not yeah, it was definitely 1998. So now when I come back around, I turn myself in, I beat the case. Okay. So now I'm free and clear. I'm like 21 years old. I still had, my plugs and plus I was just down in Florida. So I start getting money again in these bars these bars that I was in when I was younger. But now as I'm older, I got my little crew together. I got like three main bars. Um, I would say they're doing like the top bar was doing like 60,000 a weekend. You know what I mean? From
Right.
Thursday to Saturday. The other
Okay.
ones might do 10. You know what I mean? This one might do 7. But yeah, so it was just jamming. So next thing you know, when you're that young, power goes to your head and having money, you know what I mean? Because I had never had that kind of money before. So I was a little bit arrogant. Well, let's just say a lot arrogant. So next thing you know, you got the narcotics force, Northeast District. What happened was they got on my heels because one night we were outside of one of the bars after it closed. Now I had no coke this night. I was out. I didn't have nothing. So we were all out there just chilling, drinking. It was a summer night. You know, people were stopping. You know, stopping their cars. Everybody hanging out on the corner. You know what I mean, in front of the bar all night long. So anyway, I see this white neon, pull around the corner. So I'm looking. Next thing you know, this dude comes walking down, and he's a fat dude, right? And he's talking like he's from New York. He's like, "Oh, where's the white boy E? Where's the white boy E? What's up, B?" You know what I mean? He's talking like with a New York slang. I'm like, "Well, who's this guy?" I'm EY. What's up? So he's like, and he starts asking me about coke, and I mean, like something like stupid, like a half ounce or something. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking, like, who is? So I tell my man, like, give my man a nod to like hit him. So my man swings on him, but he misses. Anyway, we start beating the dude's ass. So as we're beating the dude's ass, I'm out there. My friends they're pretty big too. You know, I'm a pretty big dude. I'm like 6'2", 250 at the time, but they're bigger than me. And they're like the type of dudes. I was more conservative. I would wear like a pair of Air Max or something in the summertime or some Jordans. They're the type in the summertime they wear like the camouflage, stuff and the
Mhm.
Timbs and everything. And these are, let me tell you, so kicking the hell out of this dude. Well, we see a bus come down because it's in the main road. And next thing you know, see the bus on the thing. So I'm like, oh, let's go. So we get out of there. So I go to this place, we call it the Bat Cave. That's where everybody would go after, something like this would happen. So I paged my younger brother. So I'm like, he calls back. I'm like, hey, go up by Crackhead Timmy's house by the bar. Let me know what's going on. So next thing you know, I get a page from the payphone by the bar. It's my brother. He's like, man, Eric. He's like, I don't know what happened. Somebody killed a cop up here or something. Oh man, I started panicking, right? I'm like, what the hell? So I tell everybody, I said, whoa, whoa. I said, well, where's everybody at? He's like, they got everybody down the police station. I'm like, all right. I said, page me back as soon as you see anybody who was there, like Crackhead Timmy or anybody who knows what's going on. So about an hour goes by, Crackhead Timmy pages me. I'm like, what's this shit going on about the cop? Well, it was not a cop, and the guy was not dead. What happened was it was an informant trying to get a controlled buy off of me. The police let him come do that on his own. I guess they left him out to dry, and it just didn't go his way. And I guess when we were stopping him, he bit his tongue off. So like the ambulance lady or whatever asked him, they couldn't say his name or something. And then she's like, that's why, because it's part of his tongue was laying on the side of the road. So it was a pretty bad situation. So now that put a target on my back by the narcotics squad. So from that point on, no matter where I would go, I was getting raided. I'd drive down the street, they'd pull me over, they cut the leather in my seats, all that stuff. They'd never catch me with nothing though. So what happened was later on, as a few months went by, I think it was in December, they raided me. So now they raided me. I had a buddy in the house, and he did have like drugs on him, but like personal drugs that he did or something. Like, you know what I mean? I had no drugs. I had like 28,000 in cash. So they write down, of course, on the paper, they write down they take 6,000, but you know what I mean? But Merry Christmas to them. But here's the crazy part. As they're doing the raid, we're handcuffed, we're all on the couch. The one narcotics officer, he grabs me up, like snatches me up and pulls me in the hallway, like the apartment hallway. So I'm like, I'm wondering what the hell is he going to do? Like, is he going to ask me something stupid or something? It wasn't that. He tells me, he pushed me against the wall. He says, listen, I'm going to tell you something. He's like, if I ever catch you by yourself, I'm going to blow your head off, right? So I'm like, what the fuck? So he's like this. He points out to the parking lot. He says, you see that white neon? And I seen it. And I was like, oh my God, right? He's seen the expression on me. And he said to me, he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, we can't do nothing about that because they would get sued or something like that. It was. But from that point, they were on me so hard. And it was, I get out on bail. So I got locked up or whatever. So now I get out on bail. A couple months later, It's me and this guy. He wound up being my co-defendant. And I was in Ocean City and he was here in Maryland. And we had apartments where we're supposed to keep everything at. Well, he didn't put him in the apartments. He kept it at his girl's apartment or whatever. So during the course of, whatever we've done, the narcotics squad has seen me go there one time. I've never spent the night there or nothing. Well, they raided it and found some Ready Rock. That's like what we call crack Ready Rock down here. They found some Ready Rock and some dope, some heroin, because there was a drought on powder coke then. It was the beginning of 1999, if anybody remembers that. So basically, I get pulled over with him, and it's the narcotics squad. So he's all freaked out. He's like, "Who's that?" I was like, "Man, it's the police." I was like, "Don't worry, we ain't got nothing on us." Well, they snatch us out of the car, handcuff us, and I'm like, I figured they ain't gonna lock us up because there's nothing on us. Well, the cop says his girlfriend's address. He's like, "Yeah, what do you got it? So and so, Bridgehampton Drive." I look at my co-defendant. He's like, "It's true," and he almost faints. I'm like, "Wow," you know what I mean? So I wound up with no bail. He winds up getting like a $50,000 bail. So he gets out. Like when we went to city jail that time, though, I knew the guy wasn't built for it because like we go in there and this is Baltimore City Jail. It was Central Booking, actually. It wasn't even city jail. It wasn't even the old city jail. We go in there and he's like scared, like people are looking at his tennis shoes and stuff. I'm like, "Yo, ain't nobody gonna do nothing." You know what I mean? But by that point in my life, I was already progressed, you know what I mean? Through jails and stuff like that. So, but I knew he wasn't cut out for it. So I wind up getting a bail because I had a bail review. So they wound up giving me a bail and I make bail. Now I see him. On the street. I say, "Look," I said, "we'll drag this out as long as possible while we're free." I said, "But at the end of the day, I'll take all the heat and I'll go to prison. I'll make sure you don't go." Okay. That's what happened at the end of the day. Nobody went to prison. I went to prison for 6 years. My lawyer called me an idiot and all kind of stuff. Part of my deal was nobody else could go to prison because they were applying pressure. They like put charges on my baby's mother. I mean, just people who were around me. They were like trying to indict him for conspiracy. So it had to end somewhere. You know what I mean?
As you go to a state jail,
This
prison
was
or
state.
federal?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
This was state. This was state. I was 22 years old. So I wound up getting 6 years. Now, back then, you had laws that were less stringent about like witness intimidation and things like that. So what would happen back then in my state, if they were doing an investigation on you and it ended and had to close and the conclusion was, it was bullshit, they would actually give you the investigation they did. So I'm in my bunk in prison at Brockridge in Jessup, Maryland. I get this big legal packet. I'm like, where is this coming from? It was an investigation that was just done on me. I go into it. This same co-defendant, he's in there telling on me about all kind of stuff. Didn't even have to do with the drugs. All kind of crazy stuff. I'm like, Jesus, this is a guy just, you know what I mean? I just cut you loose. So I wound up doing that. I went there to state prison, and I probably did 4 years on 6. And by the time I came home, my co-defendant, he's deceased now. You know what I mean? Something, I don't know what, somebody did him, you know what I mean? But rest in peace.
So let me ask you this: what were the dynamics like at that state prison? Like, was it dominated by gangs, or was it like race based? How did the inmates like click up with each other, stuff like that?
Okay, at the state prison when I was there, there wasn't a lot of gangs. There was like you would see like some of the New York guys and all who wound up going to Hagerstown and selling drugs, and they would get caught. Yeah, okay, you see some of them, and they'd have like the Crips and Bloods, and so you had that. You didn't have the DMI, you didn't have that white gang at the time, and you did have the BGF. We've probably had the BGF since like 1995 or something like that, 1994. So it wasn't like gangs like it is now. So basically, and also where I'm from, and then we'll get into the differences because I went to federal prison and it's completely different. Where I'm from, it's really, we're not on that race stuff. You
Okay.
understand? So in other words, like like we, we're just not on it. You understand what I'm saying? Like, where as though federal prison's completely different. So back then, you just get with like people from the neighborhood, things like that, or you might meet people in there. But there wasn't a lot of with the state. It's a common story over and over. But federal prison's a whole different world. Federal prisons.
Okay.
Federal prison,
Okay.
whole different world. That's where I did most of I did 15 and a half years in federal prison.
All right. Okay. So you get out from a 4 year, 4 years on 6 bid. So what do you return to? Do you get immediately jump back into the game, or do you try to go straight for a while? What happens?
All right, listen to this. So I get out. Now I still had money from when I got locked up. I still had money. I still had a decent amount, nice chunk, like 200. You know what I'm saying? So I start a carpet cleaning business. I'm completely legit, right? But what's happening is I had just got out of prison. I was away for 4 years. I was young. I still got money. Now I got a business. I hooked up with a partner that I was doing it with. And what did I want to do for like a month or two? I wanted to just go party, be around girls, stuff like that. Be at all the clubs without even breaking no law. Well, that's what I do. I let my buddy, I let him run the business while I go have fun. That was a big mistake. By the time I come back, things are all screwed up. I'm spending a lot of my money. Like I was driving around in an Escalade, things like that off of my money. So I'm still spending it like how I used to have it. Now this money's going fast. So what happens is I have a friend now. He was selling coke. Now this would have been a minor state case. Minor. Some kid got caught in Harford County. Okay. And he wound up becoming an informant. So what he is doing is trying to set my friend up on a controlled buy of like a quarter ounce. So he meets my friend in a strip club. Now, here's where my friend makes a mistake. When he meets my friend, he brings the undercover cop with him. Now, obviously, my friend don't know it's an undercover cop. He thinks he's the guy who's buying the drugs. So the dude who's setting my friend up goes to take a piss. When he goes to take a piss, my friend tries to steal his customer, not knowing it's a cop. Hands him his number, says, look, call me if you need anything serious. He handed a cop his number and didn't even know it by stealing the customer. So anyway, this guy goes from getting quarter ounces. Next thing you know, he starts calling my buddy up for like 8 keys and stuff like that. Now, here's the weird part. I hadn't gotten back in yet to selling coke. I had not. But we had another friend named Eric, same name as me. Well, he was selling drugs, and my friend John was dealing with him. So this was even before I was selling drugs. The cop had called John to get like an 8 key, and John said, I'm waiting on my boy Eric. Now, the police have been surveillancing him. They see my Escalade pulling up there and John leaving with me to go to clubs and stuff. We're not selling drugs, but my name's Eric. I just got out of prison for selling coke. I'm driving an Escalade. He's waiting on Eric to cop. And so, you know what I mean? So that's how they got on me, but I wasn't messing around yet. But it didn't take long. So I wound up getting, back on. I met up with my buddy Bobby or whatever. I met him through his brother. He's a good dude. So I was getting like, I didn't go crazy. I was getting like bricks, I get a half brick to a brick, nothing real heavy. But the feds are already on us just from that little 8-ball deal or whatever. Now this case winds up going all the way to Pennsylvania, all the way to Las Vegas. There was a guy on the case. Listen, he was so rich, but he was a drug addict. Now, the feds, they thought that he was a drug dealer. Here's why. My friend John actually worked for this guy. This guy actually inherited like, you ever hear like Ameridebt and stuff like that, debt consolidation companies?
Yeah.
He inherited one. It was called Debtscape. He's about 32 years old, 34 years old at the time. He inherits this. Now, it's not Ameridebt, but it's worth about 30 million. So this guy is really worth that money. He hired my friend John and paid him $60,000 a year. And what John had to do was he would use a company car, which was the guy Bill's car, his Benz, brand new, the biggest Benz. He would have to wake Bill up in the afternoon, roll his blunt, and have some Coke and some Special K and some ecstasy for Bill at all times on deck, and then drive Bill around while Bill was on the fax machine doing drugs, running whatever. You know what I mean? So that's how much money this guy Bill had. So what happened was Bill went into this place called Prestige Imports. It's a car dealership. They're like what are Persian guys. So Bill goes in there with cash, and he throws however much money the cash was, like 150 grand, 200 grand, I'm not sure, whatever. He throws it on the counter and tells them, "I'll be back to pick up that Ferrari next week." So he's cocky. You know what I mean? The feds come in right after him and asked the car dealership, like, "Whoa, what's up with that guy? What do you know about him?" They went into saying, "Yeah, he always buys cars cash. We think he's a drug dealer, all this stuff." The guy was a drug addict. He was a drug addict, trust me, but he was just rich. So they had all these control buys and stuff basically off of John. Now, I believe it was August 4th, 2003. All of a sudden, I'm living in Pennsylvania, but we still have the family house in Baltimore City. Now, my little brother, both my brothers, my younger brothers, they passed away now. But my youngest brother, he was around at the time. He was like 16. He calls me up. He's like, "Eric, the house is getting raided." I said, "What house?" "The Cave-On." So I haul ass down there because I'm in Baltimore. He's like, "Don't come here." I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna cuss these people out. I think it's just a regular police. There's nothing there. I don't even live there." Well, when I get there, they handcuff us. They put us on the couch. They search the house. So I'm cussing and everything, but this does not look like anything I'm used to. These aren't normal cops. That this isn't the narcotics force that harassed me. So basically, what happens is they find nothing. Now, after they find nothing, they go outside and they take my Escalade and leave with it. So I'm like, whoa, 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 hold up. So I start cussing the guy out, who's the last guy who's leaving. He pulls out his badge and he says, "Eric, we're going to be back for you." He's like, "Trust me, you've never dealt with something like us." So I'm like, "Oh, whatever." You know how it goes. Well, the next morning, I go to my lawyer. So when I go to my lawyer, I tell him what happened. And I'm like, "Look, I just want to get my truck back. They didn't find nothing." Now, that same night, like 30 houses that got raided at the same time. So obviously, I know what this is kind of about. So I don't understand who these people are, like the law enforcement people. So my lawyer takes the paper. He makes a phone call. I'm sitting there with my little brother's friend. So you know how you'll hear conversations turn sideways? Like my lawyer was confident at first, and I seen the air go out of him. So he hangs up. Now he asked me, he's like, "Eric, would you want him to leave the room?" I said, "For what?" I said, "Say whatever you got to say." He's like, "Look, man," he's like, "this is federal." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "But we can get your truck back." I'm like, "All right, we'll get my truck back." He's like, "But here's the thing. They will want you to sit down." Was there a bunch of houses raided last night? I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay. They won't tell me." My lawyer's speaking now. He's like, "They won't tell me flat out what it is because it's still sealed. But from my expertise, this is a wiretap for, drug dealing, obviously." So I'm like, "Okay." So he's like, "But they would want to sit down and talk to you, and you're not indicted, and you would never be indicted for anything to do with this case, and you could get your truck back." So I'm like, "So you're saying like sit down with him, like be a rat type deal?" He's like, "Yes." I was like, "Well, I'm not going to do that." I was like, "And I don't care. Keep the truck." So as I'm walking out of the office, he's like, "Eric, all right, get ready to go to prison." I'm like, "Damn, Gary, you're like wishing bad luck on me. I'm not even indicted." I said, "That was what, August 4th?" I said, "Them raids happened." So that was August 5th that I see my lawyer. August 19th, I get a knock at the door. I look out the window. It's two United States Marshals. They're like, "Hey, Eric, come on out. You're indicted." I'm like, "What?" So I'm just grabbing a cigarette. I'm smoking a cigarette. They're like, "Don't try to run. Just come on down. Come on out. You're indicted." I was like, whoa, this is something out of a movie. They're not kicking in the door. You understand? They already had enough. Basically, that I learned that. So I go down. I get arrested. So they drive on the way to get booked or whatever. They were like, "Do you want to say anything or whatever like that?" I was like, "No." So then they just laughed and they're like, "All right, don't worry." Never bothered me again. I get to I get down to the federal building, the courthouse, and I get booked and everything like that. Now this is completely different. I have an initial appearance that day, and I have what's called a detention hearing going to be set for like the next day or the day later. So this is all new to me because I've only dealt with the state. You can see a commissioner back then, you get a bail, you either bail out or you wait to see a judge, they'll raise it or lower it. So I'm figuring it's still something like the state, but it's not. So when I wind up going in for my initial appearance, one of my co-defendants was actually already locked up. He got locked up, indicted 2 days before me. Now, I see him in the bullpen. I barely know him. I do know him from like the strip clubs and stuff. So I'm like, hey, what's up, man? He's like, oh, what's up? I'm like, so what's going on? He's like, going to go see if they're going to release me. We're actually going to the jail, to the courthouse together. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm figuring that's normal. So we're in the same bullpen and everything for a minute. Well, anyway, they get him out of there. He goes and he's gone for like an hour or two. So he comes back, they put him back in the bullpen, and I'm like, so what happened? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm getting 10 years. I'm like, God damn. So they do it like this? What do you mean you got 10 years? So he's like, yeah, but I'm going home in like an hour. So I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? So they're like, get him out of there. So they got him out of there. And somebody had came back who was speaking with their lawyer while he was speaking with the state's attorney or the lawyer, whoever he's talking to. They could hear him through the booth. They're like, man, that guy was telling everything or whatever. So I'm like, this is all new to me. I don't understand this. So I'm like, what just happened? The guy just said he's got 10 years and he just walked out the door and the case is only a couple days old. My head is spinning. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when they unseal the indictment, I'm originally charged with distribution of over 5 kilograms of cocaine, which powdered cocaine is over 5 kilograms is a 10 to life, 10-year mandatory minimum, life maximum. And in the feds, mandatory minimum means just that, mandatory minimum, So in other words, they had me in that category. Now, the drug amount they put on me, this is with finding no drugs, was 50 to 150 kilos. They were trying to put on me that I'm responsible for it. No damn way. I just told you I was only out 8 months. 3 of them months I wasn't doing nothing. And the other 5 months, the most I would get is a brick. There's no way you know what I'm saying?
So let me ask you this. What made the feds get on you as opposed to the state cops or the local cops? What brought you? I mean, how did that happen?
Because my friend John, because remember I told you it was my friend John gave his number to the cop. Well, all of a sudden the cop was able to order bigger amounts of cocaine. And then remember, my friend John worked for the rich guy. So they're actually at first trying to make that federal to get at the rich guy. You know what I mean? You
So they kind of
understand?
turned it over to the federal. They made it a federal case.
Yes, it was actually,
Okay.
no, it was called HIDA, High Intensity Drug Task Force. I think they're still around or something. That's what they're called, HIDA. They're state and federal, because there was some people like the rich guy went with the state.
Okay.
So yeah, but I went straight federal. So I'm charged with that. Now I'm sitting back, I'm fighting. Now they didn't release me on bail or just release me or wherever they do. So it's me and my co-defendant Bobby. We're the ones locked up. Now I'm fighting and fighting and fighting. I'm sitting here telling myself I'm gonna go to trial, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. My lawyer's telling me I'm crazy. I'm like, they don't have no drugs. So I wind up being held in county jail because we didn't have a federal detention center. So they would hold us in the surrounding counties, usually on the Eastern Shore. So I'm in a jail down there. Now, this is where I learned about sneaky stuff going on in prison. I go ahead, I try to get some tobacco in, and I go to this guy. He was broke. So I'm like, I try to use him to get some tobacco mailed in. So when I go to do that, The guy went and snitched on me and said that I was planning to escape and everything. They came in with cameras and everything, took like crime scene on the cell and everything like that, sent me back to Supermax and had me investigated for attempted escape. And it was all because he's just a jailhouse informant. And it's just like, so I started learning about that. That was actually being held in the counties. That's before I actually got to federal prison. So as I'm fighting the case, I wind up pleading out. I was the last one to plead out, but I would not plead out to that drug amount or them statutory mandatory minimums. So I wound up where they scheduled an evidentiary hearing to actually, they would have to prove the drugs against me beyond a reasonable doubt and everything like that. So about 2 weeks before the evidentiary hearing, we found a case out of the Fourth Circuit, which is the circuit we're in, which applies to me and says that the person's not responsible for everything in the conspiracy. They're only responsible for their stuff. Now, they were using Third Circuit law, which states, even though it's all federal, you got different circuit. Third Circuit law states you're responsible for everything. So once they seen we had the law on our side, they conceded. And I wound up getting convicted of 1.5 kilos. So that's a 5-year mandatory minimum and a 40-year maximum. Now, the prosecutors were so mad because I beat the drug amount, which I can't even say I beat it. I really wasn't responsible for it. They were so mad that instead of, like, we went into court and asked for 8 years. We didn't ask for the mandatory minimum. Obviously, I've been in trouble before. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we go in and respectfully ask for 8 years. They turn around. That wasn't good enough. They want 16 years. So the judge met in the middle and gave me 12 years and 1 month. And then that's when I went off to federal prison.
Okay. All right. So you go to the feds. Now, from my understanding, they got different little feds. They got FCIs, camps, and penitentiary. Where did you land?
Excuse me. My first place I landed at was an FCI. It was in it's in Glenville, West Virginia, but it's called Gilmer, West Virginia. I believe it opened in about 2003. So it was a newer jail. I got there in 2005. So it was still new, you know what I mean? But it was packed now. This jail was awesome, like, for if you wanted to make money, if you wanted, you know what I mean, if you wanted to hustle, anything like that, it was wide open. And what I mean by wide open for your audience is, like, you go into the yard at this prison, right? And I'm being dead serious. You walk into the yard, you're going to see a blackjack table right here, a poker table right here, a guy over here selling cards and candy, a guy over here selling weed, a dice game over here, somebody here selling tennis shoes, somebody selling wine, a softball game. I mean, it was like a carnival. I'm not going to lie. That's how it was. It was wide open. So I wound up getting thrown out of there. I lasted there about 4 years and some change. And what had happened was we had hit on some dope. That's back when I say dope, I mean heroin. That's back before everything changed over to them synthetic drugs. Because nowadays in prison, it's K2 and Suboxone. Well, back then, it was heroin was your main drug and weed. So what happened is we had caught some heroin, me and my little crew or whatever. And my cellie wound up, somebody ratted on us after a little bit of a run. We get ratted on. They ran down on my cellie and me. They didn't catch us with nothing, but they piss tested us both. And he had smoked weed. So he got a dirty urine. I didn't smoke weed, so I didn't get a dirty urine. So they locked him up for 40 days or whatever. Well, that night that I wound up getting thrown out of there, it's because he got out off lockup that day, and I was throwing him a party. Like, this place was, like I said, wide open. So I bought like 5 gallons of wine. I had like a big handicap cell where a bunch of people would be in there hanging out. And I'm the type of person that in my cell, you walk in there, it's going to be, you might have a guy in the Crips here, a guy in the BGF here, a guy in a Latin gang here. You know what I'm saying? I get along with everybody, you know? So we're in there having a party, man. And we're screwed up. I'm so twisted. This was good wine. So I start getting a little bit rowdy for the tier. You know what I mean? So I go out, and at that time I had a sports book. I had a ticket. And I took all the sports bets on the compound. I had the biggest ticket at the time. We had just recently got smashed. I lost like $7,000 this one weekend.
Man.
So, right, when I'm telling you about the gambling and stuff and these federal joints, it's there's money. Like it's not like the state joint. You're not gambling pennies. I mean, more little stuff will happen in the state joint. Like you'll get more people fighting over petty stuff and all. But in the Fed joint, less stuff will happen. But when it happens, it's more serious. If you understand what I'm saying,
Mm.
you know. So I had just lost like $7,000 the week before. So I was kind of like keeping track of the scores of the game that night. Everybody had the same picks this night. So I come out and I'm like, just being loud and drunk. And the CO, it was not his fault. He winds up coming up and he warns me. He's like, look, Eric, he's like, you got to go back in your cell. Well, he calls me Foss, and he's like, look, Foss, you got to go back in your cell and lock in. There's only a half an hour left. Just lock in for the night, please, or else I'll have to call the code. I said, you got that. So I go in the cell for maybe 2 minutes and I come back out. He sees that. He has to call the code, obviously. Now, I refuse to cuff up on the tier because that's any convict will tell you that. You never cuff up on a tier because now what, and this is really in the penitentiary. If you cuff up on a tier, you're making yourself vulnerable. What if you got an enemy you don't know about and he comes running out, now he could shank you? You're cuffed up. So if you don't got to cuff up on the tier, you really don't want to. So I wouldn't cuff up. I was drunk being rowdy. They didn't make me cuff up. They walked me to the lieutenant's office. They were, I guess, being nice and everything. So when we get there, I guess the cop didn't know no better. He didn't know me or something. I don't know. He goes to give me the breathalyzer. And instead of taking the breathalyzer and just doing my 30 days in the shoe and coming out, back to the compound, as he's going to give it to me, he says, I know you weren't drinking alone. So I don't know what he's insinuating. So I smacked the breathalyzer out of his hand. Now, when I do that, the breathalyzer busts. Next thing you know, I guess I get to wrestling around with them. The nurse lady, she was kind of big. She comes in, she helps them. So I guess they get me down. They didn't beat me up or nothing. Now, they get me to the shoe. Now, I'm so drunk, I can still remember bits and pieces of it, but I actually was blackout drunk. When I'm in the shoe, it's like a little bullpen while they're waiting to clear me out of cell because I was so drunk, they can't put me in a cell with nobody. So they were clearing out a cell. I'm in the bullpen, it's got bars and a little slot. I see a CO walk by. I say, hey, CO, can you loosen up my cuffs a little bit? They're real tight. And they were on in front of me. He says, sure. As I put my cuffs out, he says, and like crushed them down real hard. So I spit on him. Well, I wind up getting in the cell or whatever. I wake up the next day, the next morning. All I know is my shoulder's killing me. I know I'm hungover, so I know I got drunk. And I can remember like little things, like after I got, like I remember something breaking. I remember some type of tussle, but I don't know what happened. I'm being serious. Now, the SIS guy comes by my cell. The SIS guy, he's the head investigator for the whole jail. Now, he had been on my ass for a couple of years. He hated me. Comes to my cell door. He's like, yeah, you fucked up now. I'm like, what? I said, what are you talking about? He's like, you assaulted my officers. You're done. I'm like, what? He walks away. I sit down on my bunk. Now, I do not know at this time what happened. I don't know if I really hurt somebody. You understand what I'm saying? And this is an officer. I got 6 years. Let me see, 2003 to 2000. Yeah, I got 6 years in on 12. This could be bad. So a few days later, I wind up putting, a guy comes from the compound. He comes in my cell. I know him. He was on the other unit, but the yard talks. He heard exactly what happened. So it wasn't that bad. But during the meantime, they did send it out to the FBI. They sent it out to the United States prosecutor to see if they wanted to press charges on me, street charges. They actually didn't send the one of me spitting on the guy. They sent out the one of me breaking the breathalyzer and charged that as an assault. Well, the FBI declined. The FBI declined it. So they send it back. And then that's when the prison was able to sanction me. So I go in front of a DHO. It was kind of over like a Zoom thing. He's a disciplinary hearing officer. So I go in there, I'm guilty of sin. Yeah, I got nothing to say. It is what it is. So we get to the breathalyzer part. He shows me in a magazine. He said, look, and he held it up. He said, look, that breathalyzer is $399. It was one of the nice ones, digital. He's like, I'm going to charge you that. I'm like, fine, that's fair. I get back to my cell with all my sanctions. I got whatever on lockup, all this stuff. I'm going to get sent to the penitentiary, everything like that. I already know. And I lost my commissary for 18 months, my visits for 18 months, my phone for 18 months. And now it gets worse. I got the $400 sanction, $399, right? Like I told you about. My counselor comes walking by, taps on my window. It's like, Foss, the DHO earlier sanctioned you $399, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, don't worry about that, Foss. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, it's $800 now. I said, what? And he walked off. They wound up charging me $800. Now, for anybody who's out there and been in trouble in the joint, when they take your commissary and sanction you like that, you're still allowed to buy stamps, soap, things like that. Transfer money to the phone. You can still do things like that, even on commissary restriction. Medicine. Well, until I pay that $800, I cannot buy a stamp. Until I pay that $800, I can't buy a stamp, a bar of soap, or nothing. So my case manager winds up coming up to me, but like a week later, he's like, yeah, we're sending you to the penitentiary. So I'm like, all right, whatever. And I find out because the SIS guy comes by and he's like, yeah, we're sending you to Bloody Sandy. Now, I know they call Beaumont Bloody Beaumont, but like he's just saying it like, Big Sandy. They put names on all these joints. He's just trying to scare me. Well, I hear a guy over top of me, this white guy. He was like one of the gang members. He was in the FCI with me. He wound up hitting somebody over the head with a lock. They told him he was going to the penitentiary. I hear through the vent, he starts screaming, please, please, I can't go. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? So I'm like, whatever, so wind up getting sent to Big Sandy.
Okay, but before you get to the Big Sandy part, I want to back up a little bit. You were in the FCI in Virginia. West Virginia. So that's the East Coast, right? So, and I know you mentioned that you were in your cell with black guys, like the BGL, which is African American gangs, and Latin guys. Was that allowed? Those type of dynamics allowed because it was the East Coast as opposed to like the West Coast that you are.
Well, it's because it's kind of not really that. It's that it's like I said, it was a newer joint.
Okay.
It had just opened. So the inmates who are there are going to establish how that place runs.
Okay, so it hadn't really been formally. No one really took hold and set the dynamics yet.
Well, no, some people did come and attempt it.
Okay.
People did come and do that. So yes. Okay, let me clarify that. People did come and try that kind of stuff, but it was that's not happening there. It might now, but it would have took years to do.
Okay, gotcha.
To transform a prison like that, it would take years to do. So I didn't see all them serious politics like that there.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
So now, penitentiary. This is my first time going on Con Air. That's the airplane. Now, I was black boxed because I had an assault charge. Black box means I have no mobility. And now they flew me. It was like me and 5 other guys. We would have to sit at a certain spot on the plane, and they would have to watch us because there's like 200 of us. But us 5 are specific because we're black boxed for whatever reason. I was black boxed because I had an assault on an officer. So we fly out to Oklahoma City. Now, when you get to Oklahoma City, it's an airplane that pulls right up. You don't walk on the ground or nothing. You walk right into the jail from the airplane. Now, you got people, they got to sit and wait waiting these bullpens and stuff like that. I was able to get around that because I was under that status because of the assault. They walked me right to the shoe. So the good part about that was I didn't have to sit there 2 and 3 weeks like the regular people. They got me out of there in like 4 days because of the status I was under, because I was black boxed and everything. So I went from there to Atlanta. Now, as you're going, you're talking to people and they're telling you about penitentiaries. They're telling you about Big Sandy, telling you about Hazleton, telling you about the West Coast. They're telling you about the gangs. They're telling you what not to do with this. I mean, it's like Christ, cramming for an exam or something, right? So now, from Atlanta, we drive to Big Sandy. It's 46 of us probably on the bus. When you pull up, you see the atmosphere is different. You understand? You see the tower. I've always seen the fence, but this is the first time I've seen the wall. You understand? As you're pulling up, it's just got that aura to it. Now, out of the 46 of us, only about 20 of us went to the compound. The rest of them went right to protective custody. For whatever reasons. Now, there is certain reasons, like, say I'm a Paisa, okay, which is a Mexican gang or something like that. Big Sandy was ran by the Sureños, the Southsiders. So at the time, they didn't like the Paisas, and they didn't like each other. So if a Paisa would have went on that compound, that Paisa would have been dead within 24 hours. You know what I'm saying? So there's reasons for stuff like that. Some of the people went for that. Some went just because they're scared. And they also tell you, when you come into the penitentiary, they take you in a room. They strip you. They look at all your tattoos. They ask you. They say, hey, did you ever cooperate? No. You got any sex convictions and all that shit? No. You beefing, you in this gang, you in it? No. They got a list. If you look on the wall, they got a list of all the gangs that are there and are active. That's the first time I ever seen DC blacks. DC blacks. And the reason why that is they label them a gang in the penitentiary, which is crazy. But Washington, DC, everything's federal. So a lot of them guys there's a lot of DC dudes in the feds. And, they go hard and they ride together, but they actually got them labeled as a gang. So you see all the gangs on the wall. Now they ask me, am I in a gang? No. I got MOB tattooed on my stomach. Okay. When I got it, it stands for money over bitches. Right. They're screaming. It's like, you're going to get killed. You're in a black gang. You got a black gang tattoo. I was like, what are you talking about? They're trying to say it was, but it's not that. So I never had no problems or nothing. But it was like weird to me. So then they'll tell you, they'll be like, yeah, make sure you always keep a knife on you. This place is wild. I'm like, what the fuck?
So the guards are actually telling you that?
Yes. They will tell you get a knife.
Damn.
Yes, they will tell you. That's why these people went to protective custody. So now I get there, situated or whatever. As we're getting there, the power structure in that prison is changing because these federal prisons, they will change over every so often. So they ship a bunch of guys out and bring a bunch of new guys in. So this is all changing because of how violent it was. When I arrive, the jail's already locked down. The whole prison is, because the Crips and the Muslims got into it in front of the chow hall. When I say got into it in the penitentiary, that's different than got into it in an FCI or a low. In the penitentiary, there's really no fist fights, especially two different cars. Now, you might be able to fist fight your homie if the homies are cool with it. You understand? But you're not going. When I say got into it, there was people getting hurt. There was weapons, big weapons. So it's locked down. Now the prison is split. All the units, I don't think till this day can ever go out together. It was so violent. So I was on C unit at this time, C2. It was like receiving. So I wound up in a cell. I caught a cell with a good TV shot, and I was the only one in the cell. I got a cell by myself. I already had all my property there and also had my radio and stuff. So I was chilling. Now, my first night there, I hear on the floor, probably after 11 o'clock count or whatever, I hear. So at first I'm like, what the fuck is that? I hear it here, I hear it there, I hear it there, I hear it there. It's people making knives.
Mm.
These people had already been there a couple days. So they've already been able to cut the bunk or do whatever to be able to get themselves a weapon. So one thing you know in the penitentiary, and the COs know this, everybody knows this. When you have these type of transitions, like I just said, a bunch of new people coming in and a bunch of people leaving, and the prison's locked down, when this prison gets unlocked, I guarantee you 100%, at least one person's getting hit. They already know you're coming, okay? Because we have our numbers. My last three digits are 037. I'm from Maryland. You know, Boston might be 038, DC's 007, you know. So laundry has to get a list. People work in laundry from all different areas. Yo, you got someone coming in. So they'll go to the shot caller or something. You got someone coming in by the name of Eric Foss from Maryland. So you got already people checking into you before you're there. You understand? This is without all the email and stuff. This is without that. These people, let me tell you something. It's a serious world. So when the doors open, somebody gets hit. I think that time probably two people got hit. And then I don't think we got locked down for that more than a day because the COs
Why?
already expected it.
Why did they get hit? I mean, what was behind that? They come in with bad paperwork or something, or
Well, there could be a few reasons. Okay. Usually it would be some bad paperwork or a sex crime. Okay. But you also got situations like this. Somebody like say we're at Big Sandy and you're just not the popular guy. You're not a rat. You're not a chomo. You're not nothing. You're just not, me and my guys don't like you. And we got more guys than you. So we go to jump you and you fight us back. And there's more of us than you, you know, so they wind up shipping you somewhere else. We might send word, you know, find out where you're going, send word and put a bad bone on you. Like, yeah, he checked in. He wouldn't come back on the yard with us type, you know, so there is bad bones. Also, with all the gang activity, there's people who've dropped out of gangs. There's people, I mean, it's just so much vetting. And there's so many mistakes that can be made or things that can be misconstrued. You know what I mean? So that's why this happens all the time. All the time. You could have a bad name for in commissary or something. Like some people run up bills, drug bills, and they check in. You know, they'll put themselves on PC or they'll beat somebody up and go on PC, not PC, go on lockup, go to another jail. And they got the paperwork to say, hey, this and that, but then they get found out, something will happen. So it's different things like that. But yes, you hit it spot on. It's usually be something about paperwork.
okay. Now let me ask you this. I want you to clarify or dispel this for me. Now, when it comes to the whites, now in federal prison, break that down to me. Do all the white people just get together as we run white, kind of like how they show in the movies, with the AB being at the top of the chain, or are there like multiple white gangs, or are there like whites run by their particular state? Clarify how that goes for me. Yeah.
Okay. Like, remember I told you this was like cramming for an exam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My first day in the yard when everything opened up and was good, I go out obviously to the yard. So I got my hat on, boom, got my Air Max on, which, I ain't supposed to have them, but, I was slick, got my gold chain. I start walking the track. I look in one corner. I see a bunch of white dudes with tattoos all over their face. Look in another corner. See a bunch of Spanish dudes, Mexican dudes like that. Look in this corner. You got the black dudes with their sweatpants pulled up to their belly buttons. You know what I'm saying? With like the little afros and shit, like the real, like old school, like some shit you would see on the Discovery Channel.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is suited and fucking booted. I have never seen white gang in my life until then. And I swear to God, never had seen a white gang in my life. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is like crazy. I run into a guy I know, this guy Ray. He's from DC. He's a black dude. So we walked the track. I'm like, so I'm getting a rundown. So he's telling me how it's real political, how it's racial and all. And I'm like, well, Ray, he's like, yeah. He's like, you don't just be who you are, E. You know what I'm saying? Be who you are, blah, blah, blah. And he's giving me all the game. And now remember, I'm already 6 years into my bid. You know what I mean? 6, 7 years almost into my bid. So I'm not a fish. You understand? I'm not a smaller dude, so I'm not like the type that's going to get like preyed upon, but I watched the preying upon by the whites, especially. What you'll do is with the white guys, you'll have different gangs, like you said. Yes. Okay. Now, AB, everybody always gets this confused. They think AB covers everything. No.
Right.
When you're talking federal, and this is for the California guys, the California brand, California is where all this originated. So the California AB, that is the brand. They are the creme de la creme, okay, of the white gangs, right? Or they were. Now, they aren't particularly a white power gang. Like their sign is the clover. There wasn't a lot of them. You had to be a very serious person. I myself have never met one till this day. They could not go below penitentiaries. And when I was at Big Sandy, I think there was one maybe a year before I was there, and something happened. He crashed out with another white gang. We'll get into that. But when people say AB, they're saying that so broad. When I say AB, I mean the California brand, and that's the federal system. So now you have the ABT, Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. You have the AC, Aryan Circle. You have SAC, Soldiers of Aryan Culture, or something like that. They're from out of Utah. I don't know if I'm getting their name right. Shout out to SAC or whatever if I got you wrong. But, ARM, Aryan Resistant Militia. Now, these gangs that I'm naming you right now, let me see if I missed any. Besides the brand, those were the white gangs on the yard with me. Now, I don't think dirty white boys could walk there because I never seen none. So I don't know all the situations, but there is a ton of white gangs, and you wouldn't believe it. It's just like crazy. I met a lot of, I learned a lot about the structure of the gangs on the West Coast. I like, the tightest structure was the Southsiders. Now, because they were all as one, as you were just speaking about the whites, the whites aren't all as one. You got white guys like me, which they would label us independent. So I'm an independent white guy. Is that still technically a gang? I guess you could say so. Because if the independents get into it with the skinheads and we got to go to the yard, I'm coming to the yard with the independents. You understand? So it's still kind of a gang.
Okay.
But as for the whites, they're separated by actual gang members and, the independents and stuff like that. Now, Chow Hall, with the white people, yeah, they'll all be in one area. But there is different tables also. This is a gang table. This might be the Boston car. Each area might have cars of white guys. Like, put it this way. I'm an independent, but there's not a lot of white guys from Baltimore. So a lot of times I'll hang around the guys in the Boston car. You understand? The East Coast white guys, the ones who aren't on all the races and Nazi stuff. You understand? You'll find like your own people. Actually, Ohio guys too. Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio.
They will all be considered independents.
Yes. And there are more of them. There are more white guys from them areas that are like me. So I would hang around with them.
Okay.
You understand? But I guess it's all gangs, you could say.
So let me ask you this. So since the white John all is one, now say one day some Crips come in on the yard, start stabbing a bunch of guys from SAC, soldiers area culture. Is there any type of politics where all the whites would have to jump in because of that, or they'd be like, that's just between them two?
No, you're going to have to jump in.
Okay.
You're going to have to jump in. Any race, if any race sees another race hopping on them. But now let me say something about that. When things get to that level, you already know it's coming because people don't cross them boundaries. It's
Okay.
called it's a hands-off policy in there in the penitentiary. What I mean by hands-off policy is a black guy and a white guy per se. Now, I could get around a hands-off policy because of how I am. And, it would be kept, say I got into it with one of my homies that was black and we fought out in a cell or something and, we let it go. You could get away with something like that, but you're really not supposed to do that. The reason being is because this could affect the whole United States of America. So now look, I don't know if you've heard about the incident in Lewisburg between the actual brand when they sent Barry Mills and them sent that message to kill all the DC blacks. It was he's all the way in Marion or ADX or something and is able to make a message out of piss and get it down there. So at 4:00 on that day, all them guys down there, them white gang guys, started just hitting the DC blacks for something that was going on another coast, possibly. So that's why there was a man that got his head cut off in that, and they rolled it down the tier. Now, guys out there, I'm not saying that the DC didn't bust their ass up too in these wars. I'm just talking a certain incident, you understand, that gives the best theory, the reason why there is these policies, because they can affect everybody. When you're over here on A side and I'm on C side, and you and your buddies just jumped on a white dude over on that side, before the dudes over here even know about it, some white gang members or white guys might send a bat signal through the window telling the white guys over here to hit all the black guys. So you understand this really happens. So you don't want to cross. That's why they got the hands-off policy. So that really does. You're not going to see that kind of stuff happen. You eat your own. That's why you have shot callers. That's why you have these gangs. That's why you have these cars. I mean, they're there for a reason. The politics ain't all bad. You understand? But they can just go really bad.
Okay. Now, earlier on, you mentioned like the Serenos ran Big Sandy. What do you clarify what you mean by that? Is it like some people had a perception of, okay, one group dictates the whole prison when they say you run it? Do you mean like that, or do you mean that they had the most numbers? Clarify what you mean by that.
Okay. What I mean by that is this. Definitely had the most numbers. Okay. There was about 400 of them on that yard. Now, so by them having control of that yard, if you're an enemy of theirs, you're not going to last. You're not going to walk that yard. The other Mexican gangs and stuff that were in on that yard, which was the Texas Mexican Mafia and the Tango Blast, they were there. But every yard, penitentiary yard that you have Serenos, you're going to have at least one Emmy. What the Emmy is the shot caller. He's the black hand. He's in control of Serenos. Sometimes you have two of them. Now, look, this is very well structured. The Emmy at that time allowed the Texas Mexican Mafia to be on the yard of Big Sandy, but they were not allowed to call themselves Mexican Mafia. That's what I mean. Listen, when the Emmy will go to the yard, okay, he's walking around the yard. He's going to have a guy on this side and a guy on this side. Now, if he wants to take his coat off and drop it, one of them guys is going to catch it and they're going to carry it. If he's in the chow hall, which, the Emmy really don't have to go to the chow hall, and a fight breaks out between Michigan and Ohio, the Serenos are going to stand up and surround the Emmy so nobody can touch him. Now, his power is like that of the warden because of how hard these guys can go. Their car is vetted so hard. And the Emmy expects the same to be done with the other cars, but it's really not. I'm not putting no other car down, but they are just strictly vetted very hard. You got to remember, their stuff spills out to the streets They were born into these gangs. They didn't just join them. I got to know that because I seen there was something going on with some bills. The Serranos, a lot of Serranos like to do dope. So I think there was some little bit of a rumor now that they were owing some bills. And it gets back to the Emmy at the time, Bobby. He didn't get high. He didn't like them getting high. He called a meeting on the yard. Now, I told you the yard split, right?
No.
They actually let him have all the Serranos on one side of the yard. Nobody came near him. People could see from a distance, but you couldn't get near it. He came out, he stood there. They all like took a knee, and he just lectured them or whatever about whatever bills. I found out later it was about the bills. And, he said he was going to clear it up. But next time, there's no games. And they will get rid of their own. You're not going to do it. You're not going to go against them. So now, with that being said, he also has power to where as though when his guys go to the shoe, they go to the hole, he makes sure that they're getting treated right back there. Other words, they better be getting hot food. The police better not snatch them out, beat them up. None of that kind of stuff. But it works both ways. His guys can't be back there acting a fool, shitting on the police, throwing piss on, stuff like that. So they run a very, very, very tight ship. And here's what happens. So as I told you just a second ago, he said he was going to pay them bills. Every hustle that any Serrano has on that yard, like say I'm on B side, Bobby's on A side. Some Serranos on my unit, they had a poker game they were running. Bobby gets a third of that. Any hustle they got. I don't care if they're making ice cream. I don't care if they're stealing out of the kitchen. That third goes in a kitty for situations where they get new people in because they do take care of their people. They'll have a big, nice package for them. It might go to pay off some bills, do some things. So, yes. So he kept good control of that type of stuff, but they didn't like him. Now, I'm not saying all of them. Here's how I know about the street thing. I used to drink with Serranos. So we'd all be in the cell drinking shine. What that is wine that's been turned into like white lightning, we call it. It's just liquor. I mean, this shit will get you real tore up. So we sit around, everybody drinks. They get a little bit loose talking. So they were talking about that meeting, about him scolding them about the bills or whatever. Okay. So I said to them, I said, damn. I said, yo, if y'all don't like them like that, y'all are deep as hell. Why don't y'all tell them, fuck yourself? They said, we can't do nothing like that. I'm like, huh? They're like, their families could be killed behind something like that. They said, this is for real. They were born into it. Their families are Southsiders. They're Serranos. They deal with the black hand on the street. You know what I mean? So this goes all the way to the street and stuff. So let me give you an example. This is crazy. If the black hand guy, if the Emmy tells the Serrano to go stab the warden, I don't care if that Serrano's only got a week left till he goes home. He's got to go stab that warden. So listen, as of vetting everybody, taking care of their own and having the most structure, I mean, them West Coast, all the West Coast guys, Crips and Bloods too, because I've seen some real ones of them. They have the most structure and stick to the script the most. I will say that.
Okay. Now, in your time at Big Sandy, where did you see the most violence? Was it in between different cars and different races, or was it within the same groups?
The white boys put on the best show.
Mm-hmm.
The white boys put on the best show. People will tell you that. What I mean by that, you got to remember, the white dudes, you're going to have a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics. You understand what I'm saying? You're going to have a lot of these guys are from the hills and stuff. So they get that moonshine in them, some dope in them. I don't like him. You know what I mean? Next thing you know, they're change, like Michael Myers. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm serious. The natives too, and the Serranos. But yeah, the white boys put on the best show, man. I mean,
Okay.
because they got a lot of problems too. Because, like I said, with the drugs, they'll have. In other words, say a white guy goes to the Serranos and owes $1,000 for dope. The Serenos aren't going to stab him. They're going to come to the white guys and say, hey, he owes us money. Y'all got to take care of that, just like they would take care of us. You understand? So usually the white guys are broke half the time. So they'll get something together. The white guys will usually make some shine because they got kitchen jobs. They steal. They'll make shine for the Sopranos to kill the tab, and then they'll stab the white guy. The white guys will stab the white guy. The Sopranos not going to do it unless the white guys just refuse to do it. Then it's going to start a big war.
Okay.
You eat your own. Let me put it that way. You eat your own.
Okay. Now at Big Sandy, like now, how did the other cars, when it came to taking care of business, like if the blacks had a problem with the Serranos and they attacked, did each car defend itself? I mean, you know how sometimes you hear these stories about, oh yeah, one car just wiped the other car out and smashed them. How in your perception, how did you see those situations?
We'll see. Once again, like you're saying, like now I did hear about in 2013. My homies got into it with the Serranos, I think at Big Sandy. So you do have some car, but you got to remember that's Baltimore, DC and stuff. That's a deep car.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wild. You know what I'm saying? Listen, Baltimore City, we don't care about that shit. Just like I said, they're the best structured and all that type of shit. But come on, man. Baltimore City, come on. So, but it's like the same out there. So I'm not putting them down. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing. So you do have incidents like that, but they're very rare because people don't want to cross certain lines, man. And but getting into that, let me try to get my best example. Something which you're alluding to could become a race riot. You understand? When then it's not no longer going to be the New York car, the New England black car, the down south black car. No, all the blacks are going to become one car.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be the Southsiders, and you know they got some lines with the whites if something would pop off. Like the Norteños, I believe, got an alliance with blacks. You understand? I've never seen something like that happen, and thank God. And it's a rarity because, like I said, of the things that happened in the past, people are scared of that. Everybody, listen, every one of us is scared of that. And every inmate, one of us is scared of that. No matter what race, what car, how tough we are, anything, we don't want that because we can become a slaughter victim without even knowing. So it's usually, you eat your own, like I said.
Right. So most people want to avoid the war, but when you go at that level of federal prison, you still will take care of the business, no matter who the opposition is, pretty much, if it can't come to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you still got it. You know what I mean? If it comes to it, I mean, it comes to it. You understand?
Okay.
But like, these are situations, most of your stabbings, you'll see Crips stab Crips. Or like, okay, two cars got into it, the Muslims and the Crips. You'll see something like that. But now we're locked down for that. Now, the reason why something like that will occur all the time, and you might see the SAC, like I told a story on my show about SAC going at it with the Boston car. These were two different white cars going at it. Two different black cars might go at it. That happens all the time, and we'll get locked down or something. It's no big deal for real. But when it crosses racial boundaries, it can affect the whole United States of America. You understand?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because we want to conclude on time. So when you're in this violent, ultra violent atmosphere, how do you start to transform yourself? Was there just like a situation that boom, the bulb went off, and like, dude, I gotta change myself, or was it something like a gradual type of thing?
You mean change myself for the better, become more
Yeah,
humble? Yes. Okay.
yeah, like when you was like, I need to get out, get the fuck, I got 6 more years left. Let me get the fuck out of here.
Well, let me say something. I really didn't get serious about changing my life totally until recently. I'm going to be
Okay.
honest. Okay.
Oh.
But now in the penitentiary, though, I learned a lot of stuff. I learned a lot about different people, different cultures, the gang cultures and stuff. This is stuff that I've never seen. I learned about respect. I learned about respecting myself. I learned about respecting the next man. I learned about not worrying about, if this guy looks like he's not. Listen, I've seen people, man, the stuff that you see, it's just stressful, very stressful. The respect level is a lot higher. Just I'll tell you something that happened to me. My first day there, the chow hall was empty. I go in there and I'm trying to get the machine to get a drink. So I cut through the tables. Nobody's at them. The old head from the kitchen, he was a black dude. He pulled me out. He said, "Yo, main man, come here." And he was very respectful. He said, "Look," he's like, "this is your first time in the pen?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Don't ever do that again." I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Look," he's like, "just don't cut through the tables. We don't do that." So as long as you go, your paperwork and all straight, and you go along certain lines, you'll be okay. But like I said, in certain cars, like the white car is like, you get a lot of troublemakers, a lot of them gang members. They'll like try to make people conform and then put in work and stuff, so each one's different. But like for me changing myself, man, it's like I seen the lost souls. You understand? I've talked to them guys who are never going home. I see them sitting on the wall. They've been sitting there for 30 years. I see the guy that I talked to that his eyes are totally black. I know that he'll chop my head off in a second. I don't have them eyes. You don't have them eyes. I can see them eyes from a mile away. You learn these things, you know. So you meet good people too, though. But yeah, so I had to like come, like how you're saying, I did come to a conclusion there, and I didn't get in no trouble. It was hard to get in trouble there. They just don't want violence. They don't want violence. I know a guy there. He was always failed piss tests. He got 10,000 a month. He was like an Eskimo or something. Some oil was on his property, but he was a heroin addict. So he'd buy all the dope, and he'd owe money every month. He'd spend his whole 10 grand. He would go to the shoe for pissing dirty. The counselor would run him down to the shoe, would run him a bunch of forms so he could send money to the people that he owed, so that it didn't start a war on the compound between races.
Wow.
So that's how serious this stuff is, man. So like, you learn a lot. And I didn't want to be one of them lost souls.
Okay. So what's your life like today? Like what are you into? I know you got pretty popping YouTube channel. What's going on with Eric Foss today?
Well, I like you said, I got my YouTube channel going. I try to put a message out on my YouTube channel that sometimes we can get into glorification with these stories and stuff. And I just want to put a message out on my channel, that the prison stuff isn't cool. You know what I mean? I lost all the best years of my life, and that's facts. So if people ever watch my stuff or whatever, that's my message. I don't get into the attacking people and worrying about this one and that one. I just try to tell people, what you got coming if you act a certain way. And also I've been around a lot of mobsters and big gangsters and big names, and I'm still friends with a lot of these guys to this day. But I dibble and dabble on real estate, do some flips, remodeling homes, stuff like that. I'm just really focused right now on just living life, man, breathing, relaxing, because I haven't been able to. And my voice is hoarse because I'm yelling at the dogs. I'm taking care of 6 dogs.
Okay.
That's why I'm sorry about this interview, guys. And for the audience, my voice usually ain't like this. But you know, so yeah, that's just all I'm doing, and trying to get a positive message out, because
Do you have
negativity
anything?
is too easy to spread.
Right. You have anything forthcoming in the works, like a book or anything about your life or anything like that in the future?
I've talked to a couple people, so I talked to them about books and maybe like little like a B movie type documentary type stuff.
Okay.
So, I've been in the works talking to people about stuff like that. But I'll be honest with you, I've been really, really focused on my channel. And
Mhm.
because I got focused within the last month and a half. I mean, I had 700 subs for 6 months. I wasn't doing nothing. And then you know what I said? I said, you know what? I'm going to get focused. And I did. And, it's working out well.
That's good. Okay. And so for the listener audience, if anybody else want to contact you about an interview or anything, how can people reach you?
Oh, what do you mean? Like
Like
email
you
me or
got like
something?
Instagram, your YouTube channel. Like
Oh,
how can people connect with you?
my YouTube channel is Standing on Business with Eric Foss. I mean, truthfully, all you got to do is type my name in search in YouTube, and my channel will pop up. But also, people, I got my email up there,
Okay.
eboss443 at Gmail. I am on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, but I really don't go on them platforms like
Okay.
that. Like I
Okay.
said, I've been focused more on the YouTube thing right now.
Well, that's what's up. Well, I mean, in conclusion, I really enjoyed this interview. I learned a lot. hope you out in the YouTube audience out there learned a lot because it was very informative. Any last words you want to say to anybody or anything? Shout out to anybody.
Yeah, well, shout out to everybody listening. Shout out to anybody I talk about on my stuff. If anybody watches my channel, you'll see I don't bring up people that or cars or anything that I'm going to talk negatively about.
Mhm.
You know, I bring up the positive, stuff. I speak positively about people, and my message is this: it's not worth it. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. And there's so many more opportunities. But I do want to mention something.
Okay.
I'm almost 50. My generation has dropped the ball. And what I mean by that, when I was coming up, there was old heads who would give us guidance.
Mm.
Nowadays, there's a huge separation. There's nobody, and these young guys are getting wild. Like when I came up, yeah, there was a little bit of gunplay and stuff like that, obviously. Nowadays, if you don't got 4 bodies by the time you're 16, you're a sucker. No, and what all these kids are seeing is the end result with these indictments and these RICO acts. They're putting RICO acts. A RICO act is meant. The RICO was meant not for the mob, especially not for little gangs. The RICO was meant for like Walmart and things like that. It was meant for corporations, corrupt corporations. Now they're applying it to these kids in the inner cities and giving them life sentences.
Right.
I just want them to be aware of that.
Definitely. Okay. Well, there you have it, YouTube. This has been another edition. Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out your day, time away from your 6 dogs to speak to me. I really appreciate that. If everybody out here listening, go ahead, subscribe to his channel, get his subs up, get his views up. He's pushing a real positive message. And with that being said, this has been another edition of the Concrete and Steel Chronicles. I thank everybody for tuning in. See you next time.
All right, guys.
Okay.